Merry meet, and welcome to the Practical Witch Talk podcast. I'm your host, Friday Gladhart, author of the Practical Witches Almanac and founder of witchacademy.org. There is currently a huge variety of tarot and oracle cards on the market. I remember back in the 90s, U.S. Game Systems would have, once a year, just their annual tarot catalog for wholesalers. And at that time, I was doing psychic readings for a 900 psychic line, not Miss Cleo, not that one, but one very similar to it, a little bit bigger. Doing these readings, I would be able to get the wholesale discount on tarot decks, and I would buy almost one of every deck that was released that year. Nearly all of them. There were a few I wasn't interested in and a few that were beyond my budget, but overall, I was able to purchase every single new deck through the 90s. Now you look at today and you have Llewellyn and their partnership with Los Carebo. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Loscarebo, I think. They've partnered together and have started creating these amazing, extraordinary, beautiful decks, along with US Game Systems greatly increasing their production. So at this point, you're looking at this massive variety so that you can find exactly the right deck of cards that speaks to you. When it harmonizes with you, it helps you to get the symbols from the cards imprinted into your subconscious. In that way, when you're doing a reading, your subconscious can communicate with you through those symbols in the cards. Now, let's imagine that throughout the years, you've been so inspired by all the different cards, tarot decks, oracle decks you've gotten, that you decide you're going to make the attempt to create your own tarot deck. And I'm sure many of you have. Let's say you spend 4 hours every day working on this deck, and you finish about one card every week, about 20 hours per card-ish. That's only working 5 days. We're going to assume that you're not like most obsessive creatives and you're actually taking weekends off, but that's not really the reality. But just for this example, let's say you finish a deck every week working 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. After 78 weeks, about a year and a half, using every spare moment you have between your work, because you actually have to have a job, you're not going to make money creating tarot decks and writing books generally. After this year and a half, you've been sleeping, you've been working on the tarot deck, and you've been working your regular job, and you're finally finished. And let's say you're lucky enough to be picked up by a publisher. That is awesome. That is incredible. And you sign this great contract for 8% commission, which is wonderful. You know, a friend of yours got a 7.5% commission, and another friend who also has several books published has about a 12% commission. So you're doing really well for right out of the gate, never before published, never heard of before. And 8% is about average for tarot decks, along with mass market paperbacks. Now, hardcover books and larger books might have a larger commission, but we're not talking big dollars. I think 25% is the highest commission I've ever heard of on a book from a famous author, and that's extremely unusual. But the market's really saturated. What gives us this great variety makes it hard to sell very many copies of your own creation. But your publisher decides to print 5,000 copies the first year and prices them at the standard $24.99 a deck. We're going to round that up to 25. They sell 3,800 of them, and you receive a check that first year for $7,600. Wow, yes, that is amazing, right? Except you spent 1,560 hours creating the deck. That year and a half. All those hours. That's only $4.80 an hour. And you also spent $380 in art supplies, printer, paper, ink, and all that stuff. So it's really just a little over $450 an hour. And that is not going to pay off the college loan for the art classes you decided to take. But that's okay, you think. That's fine. It will keep selling. And by the second year, the publisher decides to print 3,000 copies. They sell 1,800, and then the sales take a nosedive. You receive a check for $3,600 this second year, and the sales continue to drop off until the third year, you only get $400. Now we're going to set that little story aside, and we're going to go shopping. Now, we've hit all the metaphysical witch stores in the area, but there's going to be this great midnight market event, and you stop by this witchy market with vendors who create wonderful magical items and ritual tools. You love to support local creators. Buying directly from them promotes authenticity, protects their livelihood, and you know how hard it is to make it in life just as a creative. You want to give back to the community rather than huge corporations that stamp out 1 million pendant trinkets or 1,000 resin hectate statues because the occult is trending. Our community is small, so you've saved up for this market to find authentic craft and altar items. You stop at a booth with some amazing wands. The maker explains how they gather the wood locally and the crystals are sent to them from a fellow witch in Arkansas, and then they carve them by hand and wrap them in fine sterling silver and copper wire. That is amazing. You do usually make your own wands, but you are so drawn to one of his creations that you decide to get one of these. After discussing many things about the community, the conversation turns, and the artist is a bit miffed because all the Harry Potter wands that have flooded the market aren't made by actual witches. They're machined and varnished with polyurethane instead of the beeswax and flaxseed that they use. And the artist also explains about the flood of wands in all the local stores coming from other countries, especially those cheap ones from Temu and AliExpress. As you talk, you notice they offer some handmade soap, some hand-thrown salt and water dishes for altars from the wand maker's partner, and they're selling tarot cards. And you notice your deck is on the stack. You are so excited until you notice the box doesn't look the same as the ones from your publisher. It isn't marked with your publisher's name, and the cards are thinner. The colors are a bit off from the ones that you created. They're a little less vibrant. And the cards, when you open the box that you've bought, they're not even in sequential order. It's a knockoff. You inquire from the vendor, who's very nice and is making wonderful crafts, and they explain they were ordering these long, skinny velvet pouches for their wands from AliExpress, and then they found all these tarot decks for only $4 each, which means they can sell them for about $10 and make a bunch of money. But you don't. And your sales have fallen flat, and your creativity and the year and a half have been taken from you. It's obscene, it is disrespectful, and it's bad karma. It steals from the entire community. That wonderful variety that helps you find just the right deck, forget it. Who's going to spend huge chunks of their lives creating for pennies? No one, except AI. Our community is highly interconnected. Artists, writers, and creatives in the craft are vital contributors to our cultural landscape. They inspire each of us, and supporting them is an integral in strengthening our community. There's a great significance in how you obtain your divination tools and books. Either whether you're a seasoned practitioner or you're just a curious beginner, selecting a tarot deck or oracle cards is an important decision, along with selecting any of your altar tools or magical tools. The symbols and images in the decks that you choose will become part of your subconscious language. This is also true for magical tools, altar statuary, and other items. So let's talk about how you obtain your tools and why it matters. Choosing cards that resonate with your unique energy and personal beliefs is crucial to establishing that deep and profound connection. Each deck possesses its own symbolic artwork, the own artist's interpretations of the cards, and when you select a deck that speaks to you on that intuitive level, you establish a strong rapport between you and the cards. This is that personal connection that enhances your ability to interpret the messages and insights that the cards offer. It is vital that we all support merchants who offer items with integrity and authenticity. Now, there's 2 other myths about tarot and oracle decks in general. One is that the first deck you ever have must be gifted to you, and the second is that you must steal a deck for it to work. And I want to really delve into those 2 myth conceptions. Receiving a tarot deck can be a wonderful gift and a really meaningful experience. And it's a gesture that demonstrates the acknowledgement of your interest in the tarot. It helps to validate us. But it's important to remember the power and significance of a tarot deck is not heightened by it being received as a gift. The potency lies in your personal connection and the resonance you develop with that deck over the time. So the gift serves as a starting point for your journey. And it is your exploration and engagement with the cards that imbue them with meaning and power, not the fact that it was a gift. Now, stealing a divination deck not only violates ethical boundaries, but also compromises the energy and effectiveness of the cards. Divination decks are more than just printed cards. They carry the intentions and energies and the craftsmanship of their creators. And when a deck is stolen, its energy becomes tainted by the act of theft. This can interfere with the intuitive and spiritual connection that you seek to establish with the cards. It causes energetic imbalances, and that can affect and impact the accuracy and depth of your readings and distract from the intended purpose of the cards. This deeply personal choice of selecting your own deck is something that you should embark on with wisdom and integrity, with respect to the artists and creatives in your community. Now, I want to talk a little bit about other tarot things. I had recorded this podcast previously, but I was going through about a 4-month period of some serious imposter syndrome before I got over that crap. And now I'm re-recording it, but I want to add a bunch of information to it. And this is not scripted. This is going to be a little hesitant. There's going to be a lot of ums and uhs, but there's some great information. As I mentioned before, I used to do readings on a 900 psychic line. This was back in the 90s. I eventually became a manager for the Witches of Salem network, and I managed like 20 or 50 other psychics, mostly in Salem, Massachusetts. And we would get on the line and we'd do readings. Now, eventually I became the vice president of that company. At that point, I signed a non-disclosure and non-compete agreement for over 10 years. Pretty much could not discuss anything. I have had this enormous amount of information. I had 2,500 readers under me all over the nation. And I really got heavily immersed into the psychic and paranormal world, the landscape of all the creatives, the landscape of all the readers, all the different psychics, and just about any kind of reading, not just tarot and runes and Ouija and shells and tea leaves and palm. And I even had somebody doing butt readings. That was Sylvester Stallone's wife. Anyway, through all of this, I had a lot to share, but I was unable to, basically under a legal gag. And now that that's been released, there's a lot of things I want to discuss. And the first is what I want to call the purse curse. Big part of my responsibility with managing the psychic line was vetting out frauds. And this is a big part of why I became the vice president. My mom did a lot of investigating and reporting, and she was the editor of a newspaper. And we subscribed to the Fortean Times and the Skeptical Inquirer. And I always had a very skeptical mind. I always had that evidentiary, prove it to me kind of thing going on. And even though I clearly displayed enormous psychic skill, I would always test that. I would always run it through the ringer and do all the tests from Duke University and do tests with my friends and my family until they were just sick of picking a card and me guessing which it was. It wasn't a magic trick. This was psychic exercises. But the purse curse is one of the biggest frauds that came through about 1994 to 1999. And I was able to get a few of these people put to federal prison. But I also want to discuss something about laws at the time. Now, when I was first hired for the psychic line, I was in Nebraska. And the laws on the books at that time, the anti-witchcraft and anti-fortune telling laws, we're going to talk about these a lot. They were still on the books. And myself and hundreds of other psychics and a lot of other really good people in the community helped to remove these archaic 19th and early 20th century laws. Now, under those laws, a lot of times they're grouped in with panhandling and psychic readings, fortune telling, curse removal, that kind of thing. It's great that those laws have been removed for the most part. We're going to put a pin in that and come back to it because there are still currently problems, even this last month, with these laws that are still in the books in some areas. But for Nebraska, we got those laws repealed, and I was able to basically come out and let people know that I did do psychic readings. I did most of them over the phone, though. As you may have guessed, I don't do a lot of videos or even a lot of public speaking. I'm just terrified. And I have worked very, very hard over the last 10 years to get over that by forcing myself to speak to larger and larger groups. But as you can tell, I have a lot of nervousness and anxiety about that. But I am working on it and getting over it progressively. So the purse curse started, we call it that because the very first one that we had encountered on the psychic line that we cracked down on, a caller had felt that they were running into trouble and a lot of bad luck. The psychic told them that they had a curse. Upon further investigation from the psychic with leading questions, they found out the caller's relative had recently passed away. She had inherited a large amount of money, along with some very beautiful little purses that were made in the 1920s, hand beaded. So a lot of like cool flapper purses. Now, one of these purses in particularly, she associated with her grandmother a great deal. And it was threaded with these wonderful pearls, freshwater pearls, regular pearls, silver, all kinds of really cool things. Very expensive handmade purse. The psychic told her that the inheritance she had gotten was blood money, that her family was cursed, that she had a blood curse, a lot of blood in her little message here, a lot of fear factor stuff going on. And she worked this caller. Twice she had called, and she really worked her. She got the caller to mail her the purse with $1,000 that she had withdrawn from her inheritance, $1,000 in cash inside the purse, and she'd mailed it to her for curse removal, the cursed purse. And of course, she never saw any of that again. The purse was gone, the money was gone. Now, this purse curse goes back to this bloodline curse. Just a couple of weeks ago, a lovely woman came into the store and she had had a reading elsewhere in town. She'd gotten this palm reading from someone who glanced at her palms and said, "Oh my gosh, you're cursed." Laid on the fear and anxiety heavily. Said you've got a family curse. That's why your whole family's been kept down. That's why you've never been able to get ahead. Now, never mind that it was probably because it's impossible to currently build generational wealth. Never mind that none of them had the education offered to them or even good nutritional support in youth to even have great brain development. But let's go back to it's a family curse, because that is all this psychic can really offer you, is a scapegoat to place blame for your troubles. And how much did she charge to remove this curse, the purse curse? Well, of course, the woman had to bring in a bunch of exotic things. Of course, the client couldn't obtain these exotic things. She was given the Jamaican name for them, by the way. And fortunately, she had sent them to her in text message, so I was able to get a hold of them and look at them and translate them. And one was 100 chicken feathers, and another was a liver from a chicken. I'm gotta tell you, she told her that the cost of all these expensive ingredients was going to be $500 on top of the $200 that she was going to charge for curse removal. None of those things cost anywhere close to that. The materials and supplies for almost any magical working rarely exceed $35. Even if you need gold, you can get a tiny filament of 14 karat gold wire off Amazon, like a 1/4 inch long. You can just get a little chip, back of an earring that's made out of 24 karat gold, anything. There is hardly ever a reason to spend money on spell ingredients. It's more for convenience and readily availability. If you need to cast a spell and you want it all at once, you go to the witch store and you get some stuff for prosperity. You get some comfrey and peppermint and a green candle, and maybe when you get home you're going to put a dime under the candle. Oh, but you found a mercury dime and that's got some silver plus that mercury energy. Anyway, you know what I mean. You're still not spending $500 on spell ingredients, or that's insane. So this purse curse shit is still going on. Please excuse my language, but it just pets my fur backwards. Nothing is quite so upsetting as going in for a great psychic reading, which is, by the way, supposed to be entertaining and fun and uplifting. Yes, it's a genuine psychic reading, or hopefully it is. But even when I do my own readings, the whole point of a reading is to figure out, if everything continues as it has been, this is the most likely outcome, and let's look at ways that we can direct this, increase our focus, maybe mitigate some troubles. If we see a bill coming up, maybe we can save for it. If we see trouble with a vehicle, maybe we can get it checked out sooner. If we're looking for an if-then situation, tarot is really great at this. If I take this job, what will happen? Or if I take this job, what will happen? It's a good way to scope out and plan your life, kind of look at it like a roadmap. It is not something you want to go in and get this fear-mongering until you are all worked up and you feel like you have to give this person money. Now, this isn't isolated. Sadly, this is really, really surging, not just online, but in person. This was an in-person reading just a few weeks ago. And last week, a lovely woman came in who'd been taken by an Instagram fraud. Now, the psychic profile was from a legitimate psychic. This was a duplicate profile made by a scam artist. She had managed to get her to try to Western Union her money, had given her her social security number, signed up for some sort of ID.me thing. Anyway, so she gave her a driver's license number, social security number, and she came into me to see if I could offer a more budget-friendly way to remove curses. And here we go again. Remember, I do not ever do magic for other people. I feel like that's stealing your power away from you. I show you how to remove the curse. I show you how to use your own power and the power of elements around you to work your own magic. I don't cast spells for people and sure as hell would never do it for money. I may assist a close friend, relative, or coven sister, but I am some rando off the street offered me $5,000 for a love spell. I'm like, hell no, dude. Go rape somebody else. It's just sick. Anyway, so the whole point here is she came in to ask me for a curse removal, and of course, I declined and started to talk to her about what kind of curse it was and what ingredients she'd need, how it was manifesting. Basically, what are the symptoms? And this whole thing with the fake Instagram psychic unfolds. She shows me all the text messages, and it is classic. Like, I had written a handbook for my psychics back in the 90s, and this was almost word for word of the stuff you look out for, these big red flag after red flag. It was all laid out there. And I used to talk about this a lot, about charlatans and frauds, but it's becoming increasingly more critical that we as a community of readers and psychics take the responsibility to out these people and to protest against them, because those old laws that are still on the books are starting to be reinforced. I'm going to repeat that. Those laws, the anti-witchcraft and anti-fortune-telling laws, are still being enforced. Now, back in the 90s, it was rare. There were a couple of undercover officers going around to different psychic places, especially in New York, around Brooklyn and Manhattan, and vetting out a lot of the frauds. Even tarot readers they were after at the time, but mostly they were focused on the whole curse scam, the whole doing magic for money scam. However, I am pretty sure that I did a reading for an undercover officer the other day. Not entirely sure, but pretty sure. More importantly, I have some more concrete information for you that you may not have heard about yet. Recently in Pennsylvania, I believe this was October 2023. In Pennsylvania, a tarot reader is speaking out. She was warned by a local chief of police that she could be jailed under this obscure 19th century anti-witchcraft law if she continues to perform readings for clients. No one has ever been prosecuted under the law since 1935. But it was never wiped from the books. Along with many other communities, Pennsylvania never took these off the books. And now, with the turning climate of Christian nationalism, these old laws are being dredged up and used for persecution. The police chief, Chad Martin, swung by this new witchcraft-themed store that opened in January and informed the shop owner, Lawrence, that he may be forced to act if he receives any complaints about the tarot reading services in the shop. Basically, this is a quote from Lawrence, the shop owner. He informed me basically he is not here to arrest me or press charges. However, if he ever gets a report from anyone, he'll be back on my doorstep. And you might have seen this story on TikTok or from Universal Life Church newsletter, but this is one example and the only one we're hearing of. But I know a lot of examples from readers I talk to all the time that are being really harassed and harangued because basically of other bad actors in the community. There are 2 bad actors in Hot Springs, Arkansas. There are 5 amazing readers that I know of. I mean, they're top notch. We've got one great palm reader, one really good astrologer. I'm an awesome frickin' tarot card reader. But there are some really, really good readers. However, there are 2 fraud artists in town, and they're running the purse curse scam and other different scams. This isn't the first time I've heard this, but the first time and the second time I didn't have any evidence. They were tourists from out of town. I thought maybe they misunderstood, but no. I know these bad actors. I know where they are, and I am no longer encouraging anyone to go down there. When I tried to get a reading from this fraudulent reader in Hot Springs, Arkansas, she refused to give me a reading. Now, this was by phone, so I don't know how she knew who I was. Maybe she recognized my voice from the podcast. I don't know. Maybe she's been in to see me doing tarot readings at the store in downtown Hot Springs. But regardless, I cannot personally get a reading from her, but I am going to be sending a few people undercover with recording. Now, normally she doesn't allow people to record her readings, of course. But obviously, it is easy to record without the other person knowing. However, that can't be used in most states. That can't be used to press charges or anything like that because both parties have to be aware of the recording. If she were aware of the recording, obviously there wouldn't be a scam being run. So I would really like to get a few people to go do readings in there. I hate to give her more money, but also we need to have repetitive and legitimate evidence that this is a scam so that we can really speak out against it. We're getting a bad reputation because of this one jerk. And that is not acceptable. A lot of us have dedicated our lives to this. Like since 1986, I've been studying the tarot. Since 89, I've been reading professionally. And every single day I study the tarot. Every day. At least an hour, sometimes up to 8. I've never stopped. It's been years, decades. There has to be some sort of standard by which we put ourselves and our community. And running scams on people is definitely substandard. Well, this podcast has gotten a little bit long. I try to keep them about 15 minutes, and this one's on 27, so I'm going to let you go. And now that I've kind of gotten over my imposter syndrome, if you can withstand a few ums and buts and hesitations, I'm going to be back with a whole lot more podcasts that I hope you guys will love. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you're around Russellville, Arkansas on November 11th, 2023, I will be at Psychicks for the Paranormal Expo. I'll be speaking. You can just chat me up with whatever, hold me hostage in a corner and talk about anything. Ask me anything. I also have the 2024 Almanac that you can sign there. Otherwise, I'll catch y'all witches later. Have a great, great day.